It's being billed as Apple's biggest revamp since the iPhone was introduced in 2007. The tech giant has announced a swag of changes to its mobile operating systems, unveiled 2 new Mac computers, and is launching an iTunes radio streaming service. But the company is yet to win over sceptical investors who've seen its share price nearly halve in 9 months. Neil Woolrich reports.
A company under siege comes out swinging.
Can't innovate anymore, my ass.
Apple kicked off its 5-day developer conference in San Francisco overnight, unveiling the iTunes radio streaming service, new operating systems for its computers and mobile devices, and 2 new Mac computers.
We're making the best Macs we've ever made, but we're not standing still. We've got lots of innovation left.
It doesn't look like any computer that's really ever hit the market before. So I think the Mac faithful will be rapt that that platform hasn't been abandoned completely.
In April, Apple reported its first quarterly drop in profit in over a decade, and the company is still struggling to make up ground against Samsung, which accounts for 1/3 of all smartphone sales, compared to Apple's 18% market share. Apple says the changes to its mobile operating systems are the biggest innovation since the iPhone was launched in 2007.
Some of that is catch-up and some of it is change. Is it all good? Well, from Apple's point of view, all change is always for the better. For the rest of us, there'll be a bit of time for people to, acclimatise to how those things work.
It took just 70 seconds in April to sell out Apple's annual developer conference. But on Wall Street, investors have been far less enthusiastic about the tech giant over the past 9 months. After peaking above $700 in September, Apple shares have fallen to around $440 today.
Looking at the share price right now, optically it's pretty cheap. When you take out the excess cash they're sitting on, it's single-digit type PEs. So the problem isn't the valuation, because the valuation's low.
However, investors have been screaming out for innovation, and there was no sign of the next big thing at day 1 of the developers conference, like a rival to Google Glass or the eagerly anticipated iWatch. Global equities investor Chad Padowitz says Apple has also lost its first mover advantage in mobile phones, which makes up 2/3 of its revenue and once provided it with abnormally high profit margins.
The problem is the concern of what happens to those margins on those sales and what level of sales growth they're going to have going forward. You need to know those 2 things, and for the immediate future, there's a high level of uncertainty.
It's pretty hard to see a company with over $100 billion in the bank tank in any time really quickly. They've got to have a lot of disasters before they start to look shaky, I think.
Apple's other major announcement was the launch of iTunes Radio, a streaming service to compete with the likes of Spotify and Pandora. Technology journalist Anthony Caruana says iTunes Radio will create custom stations based on a user's preferences, then try to sell them music.
It may shrink a little bit of what Apple sells through the iTunes store, but I think it'll have the opposite effect of actually increasing their share.
iTunes Radio will launch in the United States around September, but others will have to wait, with the tech giant and music industry still to agree on a release date for iTunes Radio in many countries, including Australia.
And a brief look at other business stories making the news. Record low interest rates have tempted more people to take the plunge, with new home loan figures edging up in April. The total number of loans rose 0.8%. South Australia recorded the biggest increase, climbing more than 7%. But Victoria, the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory all went backwards. And while Ford has announced it's pulling out of Australia, Toyota has shown why it's the only local car maker to make a profit. Full-year earnings were $149 million as sales boomed and production rose 7%, with nearly 100,000 cars rolling off the production line. Toyota is Australia's top-selling brand of vehicle. Before we go and look at what's making business news in overseas newspapers, the Wall Street Journal says US regulators are stepping up scrutiny of the raft of fees charged by banks, a big revenue stream that's helping the industry lessen the hit caused by low interest rates and the sluggish economy. London's Financial Times says global shale resources are large enough to cover more than a decade of oil consumption, according to the US Department of Energy's assessment of 42 countries. And Britain's Daily Telegraph says Jennifer Lopez ensured her shapely posterior. Now the UK chef Charlie Bigham, the maker of upmarket ready meals, is ensuring his senses, including taste and smell, for $18 million to protect his fast-growing business. And that is The Business. You can watch the show Monday to Thursday at 8:30 each night on ABC News 24, as well as after Late Line on ABC One. I'm Andrew Robertson. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Hi, my name is Iku. I'm from Osaka in Japan. I now live in Orange in the Central West. I take photographs of shadows. If the light is good, we can see shadows everywhere we go. You can find shadows in the kitchen, at school, in the park, in your backyard, even in your dining room. The light in Australia is very bright compared with the light in Japan. When I come here, I noticed the contrast is very strong between the light and shadows. I find taking pictures of shadows is similar to my other passion, calligraphy. They both use abstract lines and shapes, and they both look great in black and white. From a very young age, I was taught calligraphy, but now, since I am busy in my life, I don't have